Alice Porter, a 16-year-old high school girl who attended local high school. A lovely and sweet girl, completely unaware that April 22, 1942, would tragically be her last day after a brutal 6 hours of torture. Alice Porter, just like every other evening after school, was making her way back home in Pueblo, Colorado. Half of her journey, she had her friends with her, but for the other half, she had to walk alone. Little did she know, someone had noticed her usual routine and was secretly keeping an eye on her. Donald Fearn, 23 years old, had a beautiful wife and a son that time. On the evening of April 22, hours after his wife delivered their second child, their daughter, he had committed a terrifying act, a horrifying deed. Donald Fearn worked as a railway mechanic in Pueblo, Colorado. He would sit in his tan Ford sedan and watch as a group of pretty young girls left a nursing class. Night after night, Donald had a reputation as a good family man, and nobody would have suspected that he used to sit and watch girls. Alice Porter, the high school student, caught his attention, and he spent the next week following the girl. He watched her closely, secretly following her and spying on her. At what time she leave, when her friends leave, at what time she take which turn. He diligently kept his eyes on her, carefully tracking her every move. After finishing her classes on 22nd April 1942, at the local high school, Alice and her friends was on their way home. After saying her goodbyes with her friends, she continued her walk home alone. She never could have imagined that this would be the beginning of her worst nightmare. As she was walking home from her class, he used a gun to threaten and force her into his car. Fearn drove Alice Porter to a deserted building approximately 25 miles away from Pueblo. This building has been described alternately as a church or a ranch house. Donald Fearn started brutal beating while attempting to forcefully remove her clothes. In an effort to make him stop, Porter decided to strip herself. He used tape to tie her hands and feet, also tape over her mouth to keep her quiet. Alice Porter lay in a corner, her mind filled with horrifying thoughts of the terrible things that could happen to her in that dreadful situation. Donald Fearn started a fire in a fireplace. In the fire, he started to heat wires until they were glowing red hot. It was all happening in front of Alice Porter's eyes. She was all striped with no cloths, watching red hot glowing wire in hands of Donald. Walking towards her, he used these red hot wires like a fiery whip to brutally lash Alice Porter on her stomach and back, doing that for over 24 times. He also used other tools like a shoemaker's awl. He raped Porter, still not satisfied. He crashed her head with hammer, then shot her twice in the head with .32 pistol. When Fearn was satisfied Porter was dead, he burned some of her clothes in the fireplace, and he disposed her lifeless body by tossing it into a nearby cistern. Some says that the exact details of the torment that Donald inflicted on Alice Porter were not reported by the press because of the extreme and intense nature of the violence involved. Such horrific details may have been considered too disturbing or graphic to be published in the news. Unknown to Donald Fearn, it had started raining during the course of the murder. The rain had transformed the dirt roads into a thick, muddy mess. Not far from the cabin, his car got stuck, and he had to walk for several miles until he found a garage that had a tow truck capable of pulling his vehicle out of the mud. It was 4 a.m. when the garage owner had to wake up from his sleep to help Donald moving his car. When Porter was being forced in the car, her desperate cries for help drew the attention of a neighbor. This neighbor witnessed a light-colored Ford car driving away from the scene, which raised suspicions about the abduction. 4 days after Alice disappeared on April 26, the tow truck driver heard that the police were searching for a light-colored Ford linked to the abduction of a young girl, which happened on the same night he had to wake up 4 in the morning to tow similar-looking car out of the muddy road. The driver then contacted the police and showed them where he had helped the car. Local people guided the police to the deserted ranch house. Inside the house, the authorities discovered evidence of a young woman's clothes in the fireplace, along with bloodstains. They also came across a kit, a torture kit, that used for torture Porter. It belonged to Fearn. This kit contained scissors, pliers, baling wire, and a shoemaker's awl, which looked like an ice pick. They managed to collect a partial fingerprint from this awl. As they continued to search the property for more clues, they found a cistern that had Alice Porter's tortured body, including her disfigured skull. Later that same day, Fearn's car was found at a car wash in Pueblo, where it was about to be cleaned. Fearn was recognized, approached, and requested to go to the police station. At the police station, detectives obtained his fingerprints and swiftly compared them to the print they had lifted from the shoemaker's awl. When they presented him with the matching prints as evidence, he confessed without hesitation, remarking, "I just went wild, I guess." To safeguard him from an angry crowd gathered outside the jailhouse, he started using mentally unstable car to save himself from authorities. Police Chief J. Arthur Grady described it as the most astonishing and gruesome confession he had encountered in his 38 years of police work. The news of the murder spread rapidly, and the public's outcry for swift justice was strong. To prevent a lynching, authorities decided to move Fearn out of the city to the Cannon City State Penitentiary. Fearn had to be promptly transferred to the state prison in Cannon City. Even though Fearn had confessed in a written statement, he entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity during his trial, asserting that sadism was his mental illness. During the trial, which took place in June, less than 2 months after the murder, Fearn admitted that he had been fantasizing about torturing people since he was just 6 years old. According to a report by the Associated Press on June 11, Fearn informed the court that he had experienced uncontrolled impulses since before he was even 6 years old. These impulses involved a strong desire to harm others. He explained that these impulses intensified over the years and became frequent when he reached the ages of 12 or 13. Eventually, they became constant, leading to anxiety, depression, and disturbing nightmares. In these nightmares, he always dreamed that he had tortured someone. But the mentally ill card didn't work for too long. The jury concluded that Fearn was indeed mentally sound, and his claims of mental illness were seen as untrue. Consequently, he received a death sentence. Fearn adamantly refused any attempts to appeal his sentence, expressing a strong desire to face his execution. As the day of his execution drew near, Fearn openly accepted his fate and made statements to the guards, which were recorded. He said, "I'm ready, and they can hurry up if they want to. I ask no mercy. I deserve to die. I am better out of the way because I am a nuisance when that urge comes." No one could have imagined that such a seemingly ordinary family man had such deep-seated sadistic tendencies within him. Fearn's wish was granted, and he was executed in the Colorado gas chamber at 8:05 p.m. on October 23, just 6 months and 1 day after he had brutally murdered Alice Porter. He left behind a wife, a son, and just 6 months and 1 day old daughter.